We're here to make a new type of news. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's July 5th here in Seoul. I'm Shin, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nail Song. Good morning. Good morning, and Park Ki-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news stories that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, our first story has to do with how many luxury cars worth over $230,000 are in Korea. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport on Tuesday said there's 6,299 such cars in the country. These cars include Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis. We've been seeing more demand for luxury cars compared to 2016, where there were only 199 of them, worth over $230,000. And we're seeing a lot of bugs here in Korea, especially mosquitoes, now that the weather has gotten a lot hotter. But you may want to think twice before lighting your mosquito repellents, because a common substance used might have some problems. It's called electrin and is used in many insecticides around the world. But this March, the European Chemicals Agency stopped this substance from being used, citing safety concerns. That's why the Environment Ministry in Korea is also re-examining electrin and will make its final decision within this year. And the famous U.S. burger chain Five Guys has opened its first Korean branch in Gangnam-gu district in Seoul. A week into its launch, over 15,000 burgers were sold. That means around 2,000 burgers were sold on average per day. And to give you a bit more detail on how well the Korean branch is doing, Five Guys Gangnam has garnered the most sales in the first week out of all Asian Pacific branches. Also in the same period, from June 26th to July 2nd, it made it into the top 5 restaurants in terms of sales among all Five Guys branches around the world. So Korea seems to be a hotbed for foreign food branches, and we've seen a similar buzz last time with another U.S. burger chain, Shake Shack. And Ki-hoon, were you a part of this latest craze? Did you go to Five Guys yourself here in Gangnam?
Of course not. Unfortunately, not yet. But funny enough, yesterday I actually had a Shake Shack burger delivered. And funny enough, you don't see many people lining up in front of these burger joints anymore. Right. But anyway, with Five Guys, I did see some clips of people uploading how they were lining up for the open run, and it's great to see that. I even saw, I read an article where people from Japan flew over just to it was an expensive burger for them, but just to try it out. So that's pretty hot here in Korea. But I'd like to see more Korean-made burger joints do better in the domestic market. However, one upside to saving the time of lining up is in the long queue is a release of a restaurant reservation app.
Ooh, I love those.
You can do it online, and as long as you're in the restaurant within the 30 minutes of the alarm, you can just go in without just physically lining up. So hopefully with me, when the heat cools down a bit, I will probably try out the burger one day.
I think it's worth not now.
Not
because
now.
I remember in one of our earlier episodes, you said you hated waiting in line.
I don't understand. I mean, for some people, it could be the whole experience, like uploading on SNS. But with me, time is money.
Time is money, and that's why he recommended a virtual reservation that would wait in line online. But what do you think, Niall, about the latest craze, especially for foreign restaurants? Once they, for instance, if they're from the United States and they come into Seoul, people stand in long, long lines.
Very long lines.
Sell these burgers for staggering prices. But most of the times, I don't know about you, but they don't meet my expectations. What about you?
They're great restaurants. I love them personally, but I think social media hypes it up a lot more than it should be. And so by the time you get there and you take all the pictures, you've waited in line for I don't know how many hours, it's not as good. And I think you guys mentioned Shake Shack when it first came into Korea. It was during summer. I think it was 3-4 hours of lining up in Gangnam, and it's a narrow alleyway where you line up. So I was just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna wait it out a few months. And I'm glad that these chains are coming into Korea, that we can experience them even in Korea without having to go to the States. Chick-fil-A, please come to Korea. But I say just wait a few months, and then it'll be worth the same amount as your expectation.
Yeah, because you mentioned Shake Shack and Ki-hoon had it delivered to his house yesterday.
Yeah.
But before, like months back, you couldn't even imagine that.
Right.
Years back, actually, you would have to wait in line. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's now move on to our discussion topic. We're going to be talking about how South Koreans ask the main question, will you marry me? Take a look at the screen to find out how they ask. Flowers, fancy hotel suite, a new designer handbag, and of course, a diamond ring. This seems to be the bare minimum, or what you obviously need to prepare before proposing in Korea. It seems to be the perfect equation to the perfect proposal. Today, NewsGen aims to find out if our generation really has such a thing for marriage proposals by answering 3 questions. 1. What does our generation think is the perfect proposal? 2. Is it true that most people in our generation who decide to get married spend thousands for that one night? 3. How is South Korea's proposal culture different from other countries? Marriage is no longer the norm or no longer considered completely necessary by our generation. But for those looking to get married, one thing that does seem expected is a perfect proposal. A few weeks back, the Wall Street Journal reported on how South Koreans spend thousands of dollars just to pop the question. The report also listed how there seems to be an equation to a good proposal, and that's flowers, a hotel suite, and a designer bag. Now, Nell, why don't you tell us more on what this foreign press had to say on South Korea's proposal culture?
And as you know, Korea has one of the lowest birth rates of all OECD nations, and pretty much Wall Street Journal basically counted expectations of proposals as another obstacle towards marriage, and I guess leading to low birth rate. But they mentioned this specific one office worker with the name Oh Hae-rim, and she's 29 years old, a regular MZ like us, and she recently got engaged with the whole package of designer bag and a fancy hotel. And the article reported that it's quite common for people to expect this, and they wanted to all show off on social media the kind of luxury proposal that they received. So it kind of came across as how Koreans are expecting this luxury proposal.
But do you agree with that statement?
You know, personally, no. And yeah, while definitely there are people who have these standards, and I've seen on social media, actually there's around 40,000 hashtags, posts relating to hashtag hotel proposal, and there are hotel proposal packages, I think around $1,200 US, and these get reserved 38 times per month. So it's there, but I would say this is still not the majority. Perhaps everybody's raising their expectations because they see it on social media, but the truth is majority cannot afford this, and a lot of people are more reasonable. And I don't think the problem is with the designer bags and the hotel itself. The issue is that everybody wants to have the exact same proposal, and the creativity and the intimacy that's required to make a proposal kind of special for the two people is now starting to get measured by the amount of money spent. And when you start comparing proposals with the amount of money spent, you know, how sad is that?
For sure. And you know what? I think it also has to do with the fear of missing out, FOMO,
That's right, FOMO.
Because everyone uploads their personal life on social media, even their proposals, they start to compare it with each other. But you mentioned a really good point, is that the majority can't afford it. It's just a very minority of people that can afford these luxury proposals. And Kian, would you like to add on to whether you agree with the Wall Street Journal's statement that South Koreans seem to be all wanting these luxurious proposals?
You know, in some sense, it could be true and be seen as a trend from overseas because it's becoming so viral on social media. And, you know, I mean, I fully understand the whole SNS platform, but that's not the true. That's not true for all cases. And one thing I do agree is the gap between the rich and the poor has definitely increased during the pandemic. So maybe this kind of behavior is more common among like the upper class people, but not the majority. And there's also the notion of peer pressure, where you know more millennials and Gen Zs, I guess they're more sensitive to how they are viewed by their friends, especially online, where it's another reality and community. So whatever they upload, you know, and what they do, who they are, can be, you know, all categorized as like where they stand in the social hierarchy. But of course, you know, marriage, like you'll know, Niall, is a once in a lifetime moment. And I think all women, I do understand, they want it to be very special.
Of course.
And of course the men, they have to flex a little. I mean, like, you know, using a lot of money to show that, you know, they really want to tie the knot with their significant other. But For me personally, I think going through financial burden just for a marriage proposal isn't the right direction to go, because just imagine how much more burden you have to go through the marriage life.
Right.
Then why don't we sort of share a bit more scoops of reality by explaining first, Nell, how you received your proposal.
Right.
What was it like? Tell us how you got
I
the
wanna
ring.
know. Please tell the whole world.
Okay, so as you guys know, I have been married for 3 years, and I got proposed to when we visited my husband's parents in Seattle, and it was at this beautiful park at sunset, and we were taking pictures, and his sister was taking pictures for us and saying, oh yeah, do this kind of pose, do this kind of pose, and my husband said, for the next one, why don't we pose like I'm proposing to you? And I said no.
Oh, really?
Like, no, that's so lame. I'm not gonna do that.
Wait, did you know that it was going to be a proposal?
No, I didn't know. I was like, why would we do that? That's so weird. And this obviously threw him off, but he's like, no, just
do it.
Just do it.
Please.
Because I'm actually proposing. And then he took out this ring box,
Really?
opened it, and the ring was hanging upside down from the top of the lid, which was so very in character. Honestly, there were a lot of mistakes and it wasn't perfect, but I just felt like that was so him. It was very genuine and it was heartfelt. And so I was like, that's sweet.
That is such a sweet proposal.
And it wasn't expensive. It was outdoors. There was a ring. Yes, there was a ring, but like, you know, it was just how he did it from the heart.
It wasn't like a luxurious hotel suite with a designer bag, but I think that's more heartfelt.
It's cute.
It's genuine, and I love the goofy little mistakes he made.
Yes, it wasn't on purpose, I assure you.
That's really nice. And why don't you share how people around you then, because I know you're not married yet. So,
Not yet.
not yet. But how did your friends propose to their significant others?
You know, I actually asked 4 of my millennial friends who are married and how they actually proposed, and here are the answers that I got. One was at a beach.
Okay.
Second one said in a small studio apartment. Third one, it was at home with balloons, wedding shoes, handwritten
Cute.
letter with, you know, like recorded video playing in the background. And last but not least, no proposal.
No proposal at all?
And he got married. So apparently, perhaps maybe the wife wanted to get married a little more than the guy.
Maybe he got proposed to, he didn't tell you.
Perhaps, who knows? No one
yeah.
knows. So I just want to say that everyone's different. And since we're talking about how much money is being spent on marriage proposal, I like to share a visual to show what single men and women in their 20s and 30s think the appropriate spending on marriage proposal is. So let's take a look at the screen.
All right.
We can see that more than 50% think spending less than $750 is reasonable, while only around 20% are willing to spend up to $1,000. So clearly we can say spending extravagant amounts of money is not necessarily a trend happening in Korea. And on the contrary, I'd like to say, you know, more millennials and Gen Zs are practicing different ways, new ways of saving up, and even doing challenges of not spending any money for one full day, and entering group chats where they share their spending pattern and receive advice from others who also try to live on a tight budget.
I think we mentioned this during our rehearsal today, that we're seeing such a polarization of consumption patterns, because on one episode we mentioned how a lot of millennials and Gen Z love spending on luxury goods, but then we have this kato room, which you mentioned, where they don't spend any money at all, and they would sort of scorn each other, they would scold each other for spending like money on water.
I bought a bottle of water. Like, why? You can drink free water from the tap.
Go to your company and then go drink from the water fountain, stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see there's a polarization there. And we're now going to add another millennial in our talks to hear how he proposed, and we'll include him right after this. Let's hear from another global millennial on what he has to say on today's topic. He's Garrett Eater, who's recently gotten engaged. Welcome, Garrett.
Hello.
Woo! Thank you so much for having
Congrats.
Now, Garrett, tell us a little bit about yourself. I hear you've gotten engaged. Congratulations. Tell us who popped the question first and how you remember your proposal night.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Garrett. I'm just studying English education at Korea University. And of course, I pop the question. Usually it's, you know, common for the guy to pop the question. Wow, I have so many memories from the proposal night. It was kind of crazy. It was on my birthday, which was kind of insane.
Oh, that's so meaningful.
And we went to a trampoline park. And I actually had made a video the night before of lots of pictures of us and picked out some songs. And then she didn't know about any of this. I had flowers. I came in kind of jumping on the trampoline with flowers. And then they helped us like kind of, control the kids. Because I actually almost backed out of the proposal that day. I was so scared because there's so many kids there compared to what I thought. But they encouraged me to do it, and just in case she didn't like the super I don't know, public proposal, I also planned a dinner by the Han River together too, just for a little bit of romantic piece to it, just in case. But it was too crazy.
You were really prepared. You had a plan B.
Thought this through.
It's truly nice.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have
really
a question.
wanted her to like it.
Do you think that South Koreans have this set equation for a perfect proposal? Have you seen this trend as you've been living in Korea?
I haven't necessarily seen the trend, but I have talked to a couple people and I have heard about the handbags and things like that. And to be honest, I think it could be okay if they, girls don't want jewelry and they want a handbag. That's
instead of a ring.
My personal opinion. Yeah, right. Maybe instead of a ring. But I've heard of other stories like where the girl proposes or things like that. So I've heard of various ideas.
Yeah.
All right, okay, Garrett, compared to that of the States, what is South Korea's proposal culture like? And did you try to incorporate some traits into your own proposal?
Right, so what I've heard from Korea's proposal culture is they decide about the marriage before, like we're both going to get married, and then they kind of set the whole wedding up, and then maybe propose a month or 2 months before the wedding, which is very different than from America. I don't know if I tried to necessarily incorporate something very Korean into my proposal because my fiance, she also lived in the Philippines for about 8 or 9 years, so she doesn't have like all the expectations maybe of a regular Korean girl, I would say. But yeah, she's very open and also to American culture too.
I see.
All right, Garrett, let me ask you the last question. It's very fascinating to hear that you had a plan B. You were also a little worried that there were so many children in the trampoline park. So it seems like you have experience as to planning out a really perfect and really nice proposal. So could you give us a few tips? I haven't been proposed to, or I haven't given a proposal out yet. So what should I remember when receiving or giving out a proposal?
I think of course, like Niall said, you have to do it from your heart. And if both people know that the other person is committed to like a long-term love that's going to last for years and years, I think then you shouldn't worry as much and you just try to express your heart as much as you can. Of course, considering the other person's expectations and who they are, because each person's different in what they want. So I would say to think about that and try to be, of course, Americans might try to be more unique. Like my cousin, he proposed coming out of the water because he was doing because he was had the gear on to go underwater. He was taking classes to do that, and he came out of the water and like put the ring on her. So
wow,
that's really so creative. Okay, so creativity and sincerity. I'll remember those two words if I eventually do propose. Okay. All right, thank you so much, Garrett.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yay. Bye-bye.
All right, and before we continue our talks, we're also going to hear what our global viewers had to say on today's topic. Take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to say. Christina Domenico said proposal culture in my island nation, Fiji, is after the age of 25. The couple will have to tell their families they're in a relationship, and the guy asks the girl's family for her hand in marriage. The guy's family will give traditional gifts as it's customary, and the engagement ring as well. Tiras Bell says it varies from relationship to relationship, but the norm for proposing is usually after 1 to 5 years. Sometimes it's private, but most of the time it's done in a public setting, like with friends and family. Usually, the man gets down on one knee and pulls out a ring and proposes. Benny says proposal culture in the Philippines is maybe to set it up in a restaurant or in a private resort. A lot of it is planned ahead, depending on how long they've been thinking of marriage. So there's a lot of similarities to how the proposal culture is like here in Korea. And before we end off then, I would like to ask you guys how you think South Korea's proposal culture may differ with other countries.
I think Garrett really mentioned it. but I think first and foremost in the West, when it's a proposal, the meaning of proposal means you're suggesting that you do something. So it's a question. Would you like to marry me? Will you marry me? And you can actually say no. I mean, I'm sure some girls say no here in Korea as well, but it's a little, I feel like there's a little more uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's really a question with a heavy question that can be yes or no. And usually it's a surprise, and the parents usually find out afterwards. But in Korea, like Garrett mentioned, you have both sides of the parents come together. They have this thing called 상견례 and talk about the wedding date, and they maybe have already the wedding hall booked and they picked out all the wedding rings, and then they propose. So I think it really is more of an event and kind of a gesture to show your future wife that, oh, I would really, really like to marry you.
I think that's why a lot of people think of it as an event, because it's just one of the many steps you take before the wedding day.
Right.
And I remember my friends when they come to me with their little invitations, they're like, hey, I'm getting married. And I ask them, did you get your proposal? And they're like, no, my husband-to-be will propose like a day before the wedding or something.
Okay.
So I thought that was a little different from how it's done in the States. Would you care to add on?
Yeah, well, I mean, once the proposal is done, you have the wedding, right? So I'd like to talk a bit about the wedding culture. Like here in Korea, it seems very formally conducted. It's almost done in the exact same manner. So when you go to wedding convention buildings, it's almost like a factory that's performing the same routine over and over throughout the whole day. Whereas in the country, overseas, like to weddings that I've been to, it's a bit more, I guess, casual, relaxed, and a bit more customized to fit the needs of the newlyweds, like how they wanted to plan it out. It's a bit more, you know, I guess it's not as strict and formalized. So I think that's the biggest difference. And the people who actually attend those kind of weddings overseas, they're genuinely happy and they just want to congratulate the happy moment. Whereas kind of in Korea, it's like, I think we talked about this before, how they pay the congratulatory.
It's your duty.
Yeah, it's like a duty because
money envelopes.
You have to receive it later on when you get married. So I think in that sense, it's very different.
There's a big difference there. And before I ask you guys the last question, which is which direction shall we go in terms of proposal culture, I would like to ask you, Ki-hoon, you haven't been proposed to yet, or you haven't given out your proposal. So what is your dream perfect proposal like?
I mean, if I were to receive a proposal, I mean, we talked about this in the news feed. I would definitely love a Lamborghini, a Bentley, or a Rolls Royce with a pink ribbon. Actually, no.
Pink ribbon.
Actually, I'm just joking. The real proposal, if I did get a proposal and did get married, I would just want to have a very small wedding, private wedding, just with my family members. That's about it.
Intimate.
No friends.
No friends.
Only family.
I don't want to make it public. Just want to keep it low-key, quiet, just among the people that I really, truly love and who are the most important to me. That's the kind of wedding I want. And I don't really want a proposal. If I choose to marry someone, is there a need for a proposal? Yeah, we just go ahead, you know?
Just kind of
I don't even feel the need of having a wedding.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, you want to...
This calls for another
This calls for a completely different
wedding or no
think
wedding.
about all the money involved, the
That's true.
burden,
People
especially
choose.
on the male side, like in Korea. So I don't want to feel that kind of burden just like before marriage.
It's very interesting to see the practical side. I think you're speaking on behalf of many practical millennials out there. Now, very briefly though, where shall our proposal culture go then?
Yeah, you know, I think we've been mentioning all throughout the day that, you know, proposals and even weddings are a little bit overrated, like Ki-hoon was mentioning. It is a big step, but these are pretty small compared to the marriage that you're going to have for the entire life. And so I really think today's key is that you do things from your heart, and as long as you're genuine and, you know, wanting to make the other person feel special, that should be enough.
And you mentioned a very, very good point. It's what happens after the wedding day.
Right, it's a marriage.
It's a marriage. And that's all we have for you today. We'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nell Song.
Thank you.
And Park Ki-hoon.
Always a pleasure.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.